Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Hey, Faith Positive Nation, Dr. Joey Fawcett here with you. Another great episode of Faith Positive Radio. Welcome to 2021. How's it going so far? Turning out pretty good? Working from home? Where are you as you listen right now? The odds of you being in the car listening are less than they were last year at this time, right? But we appreciate you listening regardless. Man, things have changed at work over the last year. And being a Christian in the workplace has also changed a bit in terms of the way it presents challenges as well as opportunities. Now, one of the places in which, as I coach people and train them to be coaches around the world, one of the places where we continue to hear a lot of questions is in the area of HR, or for our international listeners, HC, human capital, right? So in that space, there's so many questions like, how much can I talk about Jesus with my coworkers? What can I say about Jesus? When do I cross the line and somebody might complain about me talking about Jesus? How exactly does faith at work take on expression? Well, today's guest has all the answers to all your questions. Okay, many of the answers to most of your questions about that HRHC space and how we as Christian believers can navigate that and be faithful disciples while at the same time rendering unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar as well, right? His company is called WhiteWater Consulting. And oh my God, if there's an aspect, a dynamic of business in which you experience whitewater, it is HR today. So whitewaterconsulting.net is his website if you want to pop over there. If you're listening from home while you listen to this interview. His name is Chuck Cooper. So Faith Positive Nation, help me welcome Chuck Cooper to Faith Positive Radio. Chuck, welcome.
Good afternoon, Dr. Joey. It's great to be with you and your listeners today.
Oh man, it is so cool to have you on. So you are in the HR space. Was this by default, or did you actually choose the HR space to be in today? Because we work with culture in a lot of companies, helping them create a positive work culture using coaching. And it's an interesting space to be in, brother.
HR is definitely a great place to be. It's very, very challenging. It's like, every day there's something new that comes up. So you never get bored of what your role and what your job's going to be. So we thoroughly enjoy the work that we do in that space. And I've been in it since 1999.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of changes roll out. What are some of those changes that you've seen since 1999 in the area of HR?
Oh, goodness. To start with, when I think about our clientele is typically small to mid-sized business owners. So when you think about HR, one of the first things that comes up is healthcare reform and the impact that had on companies over the years. You just got a lot of compliance and a lot of legislative changes that have occurred during that time. Even with COVID over the last year, there's going to be another round of compliance issues that companies are going to be faced with as it relates to providing a safe work environment for their employees.
So safe working environment meaning?
How do we go about cleaning and disinfecting our computer monitors, our desk, our carpets, things within the office environment?
Yeah. What about this whole notion of vaccination? I mean, can there be certain requirements around that for a safe work environment?
So absolutely. And a lot of these things that we're talking about today, when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to the safe work environment, there's a lot of court cases that are working their way through the system today. That a lot of these things, we will not really know what the end result's going to be until they work through the entire court process.
Okay. And so that's the proverbial to vaccinate or not vaccinate question.
Correct. But I think that from what we're seeing initially, I think most businesses are trying to determine right now exactly where that line is as far as mandating vaccinations. And I think that for the most part, I think businesses are going to be on a good footing by requiring their employees to be vaccinated.
Okay. So you think the court precedents will establish the fact that to work for our company, you have to be vaccinated?
Correct.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, you said you work primarily with small to medium-sized businesses. How many employees range?
That's a great question because everyone has a different idea when it comes to that question. And the numbers that we really work with are companies that have anywhere from about 15 employees. We have some clients of ours that are smaller in that 5 to 10 employee range.
Okay.
But basically, they go from 10 to about 400 employees.
Okay. All right. Great. And you chose that space intentionally?
I did because again, with the years that we've worked in the space, there are a lot of things, especially when it comes to things like the benefits and the packages that are available. It really makes more sense and it's more applicable for companies in that 15, 20 employee up to the 400 space. We have great resources that we have available to us that we can actually refer companies to that are, if they're larger than 400, as well as we have some other resources that we can help steer toward some other resources that work with the startups or the early stage company.
Mm-hmm. Sweet. So you're a Christian.
Absolutely.
And so what is it like in the HR space, being a Christian? And if you're working with companies that might have 10 employees up to 400, my experience would suggest that those are more likely to be owned privately and by Christians. So that slice of the American work experience might be skewed a little bit towards faith. But when you get in the larger companies, Northrop Grumman has 70,000 employees around the world, something like that. Nonetheless, the HR constraints around faith and work and how to express faith at work, where do you see that today?
I think it does make a difference on a lot of times. It makes a big difference, obviously, on the leadership and what their recruiting processes are like, what their application process is like. So when people are really evaluating whether this is a place that they want to work, they know whether, kind of what the biblical principles are, whether this is a faith-based organization. But I think when you get truly into the HR aspect of it, obviously we have to be very, very careful and have to be really open-minded and be making sure that we're not coming across as one where we're just demanding that everyone that works here, has to be a Christian, or that our Christian faith is something that we can really push on to somebody else. I think that from an HR perspective, when you look at the Christian faith, it's all about loving people and loving people with where they are. And I think that a lot of times we don't have to take extreme actions. But if we just walk the walk day in and day out with our colleagues and with the people that we talk with and work with, they're going to know whether you're a Christian or not. And so from that, a lot of times conversations or questions will come up where the other employees will ask questions, and then it gives you the opportunity at that time to really be able to communicate your testimony or your faith to them.
So there may be court precedent coming to require vaccinations to work for a company, but no court precedent for requiring a Christian. How can I, as a Christian business professional, discern the matter of faith with a company? What should I look for when I'm going through the interview process?
When you're in their office, look to see if they have any information, anything on the wall that shows the mission, the values, what what their values are as an organization. Maybe reviewing the handbook to see what kind of information is available there.
Okay. Yeah, and hopefully you can get that information ahead of the interview even. I know you're located, Chuck, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the largest bottler of Coca-Cola products is located there in Charlotte, Coca-Cola Consolidated. And I have a friend who works there. Well, several friends. I think you and I share Mark Whitaker, who's been on this show before as a common friend. But I remember looking at their one page, which listed their mission statement and core values and things like that, and honoring God's right there at the top of their core values. So that's going to be an obvious place to look. Are there other ways that when I'm interviewing for a new job, I should look to discern, what's the faith temperature around here?
I think the best thing to do is really just to be able to talk to as many people within the organization as you can.
Okay.
To really kind of get their perspective. And if obviously if faith is something that's important to you, to be able to bring that up in the interview as well.
So how do I safely do that?
I think as the applicant, you can certainly bring that up. Oftentimes in the interview, as you're asking questions toward the end of the process about what their values are. And again, if there are any programs that could be supported by a faith-based organization.
Can I be so bold as to say I'm a believer and I just want you to know that's an important part of my life? And
I think as the applicant in that situation, absolutely. If that is mission critical to you, then I think that's definitely a good move, is to bring that up and just put it out on the table.
Right. Now, Chuck, you've said as the applicant 3 times now. We're going to we're going to go to the other side of the desk. You knew where I was going, didn't you? We go to the other side of the desk as the interviewer. I don't have quite the leverage. Or
you really don't have. You really don't have that opportunity within the guidelines to really be able to bring up faith and be able to get a lot of information in that area. But you can learn as the interviewer, you can learn, by asking some questions about, what type of organizations you're a part of. Try to get some information about them to see whether or not that faith is a key part to them or not.
What do you do on the weekends?
Well, when you have a difficult, have you in a difficult situation, how did you handle that?
Okay. That's a great question. Yeah. Particularly if you're in a leadership managerial position, how do you deal with a problem employee? Right.
Absolutely.
And, that's a great question.
And even with COVID today, a lot of the business owners that we talk to, they really found themselves isolated this year. And as we went to shelter in place and companies were pretty much shut down, companies were trying to figure out, or owners were trying to figure out at that time, where do we go from here, or how do we pivot and where do we go? And they really had some difficult challenges about that decision-making process.
Yeah. How do we get the work done?
Exactly. But I found a lot of the people that were either part of a peer group or that were faith-based, and they were able to make the pivot quicker and keep their organizations together. And they were actually able to move forward much quicker than a lot of others.
Wow, man, that peer-to-peer or trusted advisors, that's an important concept. I know one of our coaches in our coach community is involved with Convene, which is for CEOs and leaders of companies. I have lots of friends who are in C12, which is another great peer-to-peer group. So shout out for Convene and C12 right there. And that whole notion of, if you're sitting in that leadership chair, man, the isolation is really hard. But being able to ask that question, how are we going to get the work done in the midst of COVID, and having trusted advisors around you is really important.
It really is. And that's why I've been a huge advocate through the work that we do. I just, I really ask all of our clients and all business owners that we speak with, they need to be a part of a peer group. They need an executive coach, and they need some form of a system or process with which how they're going to handle when they have difficult situations, that come up or conflict arises.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of those things you want to wait till you get in the midst of it to know how's it going to roll for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's where we see a lot of owners, they want to be reactive instead of being proactive and having plans in place.
Yeah. I tell you, man, when you have the opportunity to pray the pause, and that is move from reaction to response and really get the Holy Spirit's advice, guidance, leadership. Man, there's so many times when I just say, tell me what to do, Lord. And then it's those times when you make better decisions and you get better consequences. So, Chuck, how did you come to know Jesus?
That's a great question. I appreciate you asking, Dr. Joey. That's is something that's really personal to me. It's when I look back over the last 30 plus years, I grew up in a Christian home. We grew up in a small community, so we were at church pretty much every Sunday. But the reality is, a lot of what I did growing up and even in my early adulthood, we really were just checking a box. And so it really wasn't until we got to 1992 where I was in part of a group that owned a business in Illinois, and the business did extremely well. Financially did great, and we let as an ownership team, we let pride and ego really take over, and we made some very, very poor choices financially, and we went from really being in a great place to being in the deepest of valleys that we've ever gone through.
Oh my goodness!
And it really was at that point where I basically lost everything that I had. But it was also a time where God literally broke me down and started to put the pieces back together. And from there, it's been just a journey from the deepest of the valley back up the mountain. And it's when I look back on those times, Dr. Joey, I'm really grateful that I experienced that at a young age, because it really has helped me understand who I am, what my purpose is, and also the calling that I have, and which is to be a servant and to be able to help people. And so as we kind of went through that process, one of the things that God really revealed to me was, you don't have to be a CEO. You can literally be a support person or be a helper along the way. And what he showed to me was, if you're faithful and you will trust me and follow me every day, then I will lead you to where I want you to go.
Oh,
and so it's just been one I've had to get up every day and die to myself, and to let the ego and pride go and just be open to where he wants me to be that day.
Oh man, thank you for sharing that, Chuck. Thanks for your transparency. I really admire that. How do you get up and die to yourself every day, Chuck Cooper?
That is a way that literally when my feet hit the floor, I start every day off with a quiet time. And so it's just reading a few scriptures and praying. And then the one thing I've had to learn over time is that it's really easy for me to be able to talk and to tell God everything that I need. But it's really difficult to listen to what he's trying to tell me.
You mean the creator of the cosmos might have something to say to you, Chuck?
Yes. If I would just stop and listen.
Oh, yeah. I know, man. Save God a little bandwidth. just God says, I just need a little bit.
So that is something that we do. That's just part of our daily routine. And
yeah. So how do you get in that space to where you're ready, willing, and want to hear from God, Chuck?
When you go through a valley like I went through, it's one of those things where I found out as I went through that in the valley is where the food is, where the water is, and that's where God can really teach. Is at that moment. And when you get to the mountaintop, as great as it is, and the scenery is as beautiful as it is, not a lot grows at the top of the mountain.
Wow, what a great metaphor. Yeah, because it's rocky soil, the wind's blowing, the elements beat you down.
Exactly. So as I went through that, it's just really it made a huge impact on me. And as I've tried to model that to my kids and my family, it just remains an important part of my day.
Man. You were broken, weren't you, Chuck?
Absolutely, without question.
And now you remain broken every day.
Every day, but God's good, and
all the time.
All the time, and all the time, God is good.
Absolutely. Yeah, man, I love that. Isn't it amazing how, we know intellectually God's story is to bring life out of death, because that's what the whole Easter event's about, right?
Right.
But when it comes to that personal Easter, God bringing life out of my death, it's just harder to emotively really get your heart wrapped around that God is Jehovah Jireh. Well, you lost it all.
We did. It was a really, I was broken. I was humiliated. I was embarrassed. Had no confidence. The thing that I thought about was I really put my wife and my kids, which we had 3 kids at that time, I put them in a very, very difficult situation. So I'm extremely grateful for my wife and for my family that God's given to us, and the fact that they have been right by my side, all these years.
Wow. What a testimony. Chuck Cooper from WhiteWater Consulting is my guest today on Faith Positive Radio. Chuck, how did God build your confidence back? Because that's hard for a man. If I can just be that blunt with it, it's hard for a man once he's humiliated to believe in himself again.
It was one of those things that I kept asking, what is my purpose? And once he revealed to me what my purpose was and kind of where he wanted me to be, when we left, so in the midst of the dark days of making those poor decisions, we actually ended up selling that business to really just for everybody to kind of close out a chapter and be able to move on. And so I really didn't know for sure what God wanted me to do at that point, but he helped me get back to a time where we focused on starting a new business after we got out of with the group. And from there, we started up a financial planning company. So it gave me the opportunity to go back to our home area and work with people that we knew, and work with a lot of professionals and farmers. And what we saw there was we saw a lot of people that they had cash flow problems, but they died with estate problems. And so we saw a lot of businesses that were destroyed by that. And so I wanted to go back and be able to help some of those families that we had known for so many years. And what God began to show me through that was that one is he was teaching me that the key to being financially responsible, and it allowed me to be able to take a lot of what I had learned there and also to teach that to our clients. And so from there, he allowed me to grow a nice business through the financial services. And then all of a sudden in May of 1999, we came to Charlotte for a client meeting, came here, absolutely loved the area. And my wife and I were on our way back from spending 10 days in Charlotte, and we're going back to Illinois. And as we were going back, I told my wife, I said, we went through some model homes while we were on this trip. I'd like to buy one. And,
on the way home. Oh, by the way, honey, I want to buy one of those homes. What did she say? And
her comment was, our 3 kids are asleep in the back seat. And her comment was, I think we should do it. And so we picked up the phone and called back and bought a house. And so we went back to Illinois and sold everything that we had there and picked up about 90 days later and moved everything to Charlotte and started a brand new chapter here.
What was that like?
It was totally a walk of faith. We truly believe, as we look back on those times, God was calling us to move to Charlotte. And we trusted him that he was going to meet our needs. And he literally, he met every single need that we needed to get everything closed up with our life in Illinois and to be able to move to Charlotte. And it was just a great, another encouragement for me to be able to see God, God's faithfulness by just trusting him day in and day out.
How cool is it that God spoke to you and your wife, and both of you heard the same message? That is so awesome.
It was confirmation that was what we were supposed to do.
Yeah. And so many of us walk around with that internal affirmation. I think I understand personally what God wants me to do. But we're a little timid about getting that external confirmation, right? But you just up and out with it.
We did.
A long ways from Charlotte back to Illinois anyway, so you had to talk about something, right?
It was an exciting chapter for sure.
Man, and Charlotte has a lot less snow than Illinois, so I'm thinking that's got to be better.
Okay, so the rest of the story is my parents had retired and moved to Arizona, and we were in Arizona in February of '99, and it was 80 degrees on the last day that we were there, and it was 0 and snow in Illinois. And I told my wife then, I said, we're smarter than this to be going back into this kind of weather.
Yeah, but then we've got a coach in our community, Dr. Michael Marks, who lives somewhere in Colorado. I'm not sure that Google's put a pin drop there, but man, he loves snow and has dogs. So all deference to people that love snow. I just grew up in Eastern North Carolina, and my blood's not that thick. My blood's half vinegar, so I don't deal well with the cold. But good for you, man. I love that story of faith. So how do you act on that kind of faith, though? Because it's one thing to say, I think God wants us to do this. It's another to act on it. And Chuck, if you would, when you're answering this question, make specific application from an HR perspective to somebody who's in the workplace, has a coworker that they'd love to mention Jesus to, but they're just wondering if they should take action on that.
That is a great question. I think that for myself personally, it's been one that as we went through, that's one of the things we learned coming through the valley was just to be able to be bold and to trust. And I think a lot of times, even when I started WhiteWater Consulting, it was one of those things where God was asking me at that time, do you trust me? And I did. And I really thought that I would initiate the startup of this company, a few years later than what we actually did. But it was another one of those moments for me that God was saying, do you trust me? And if so, the time is now. Wow. And it's been a journey from that perspective as well. And it's been something that, again, we've just totally trusted God through this. And it's been amazing, even with everything that's happened in 2020, the blessings that happened during that time with our work. So, but to your other question about, if you're an employee and you have a colleague that is, that you would like to be able to bring faith up, I think that, again, it goes back to the personal relationship. And so if there's ways, I'm not saying to have that conversation maybe at the office, but it's something that you can do certainly outside of the office. Okay. And to be able to, go to dinner, go to lunch, and be able just to have questions. A lot of times, again, as we're doing here on this podcast, just to be able to have a question and answer, just have a conversation with them, and to be able to say, I would like to be able to just share a little bit about my faith and how it's impacted my life, or about how it's impacted my family, and then to be able to flip the question over to them to see, if they have a similar type story.
Gotcha. Because nobody can argue with your story, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're just telling your story. Right. And I like what you said earlier, Chuck, about loving up on people and letting that be the way that we share our faith first.
A lot of times we have a way of being able to try to make our faith more challenging than what it is. I think a lot of times if we would just love people and treat people with respect, and again, I would say that especially today,
Yes.
you're going to set yourself apart from most other people within your workplace. And they're
If
going
you
to
just
notice the
love
difference.
them.
Exactly. That's
Right.
right.
If you can avoid being an egotistical jerk and love somebody, right? Then you're going to
Exactly.
stand out and people are going to say, hey, what is it about Chuck Cooper that makes him different? And so then they're going to begin asking those questions.
And to your point on that, another personal story on that, Dr. Joey, is whenever I was working with a large company, this goes probably back to 2005 or so. But again, we had a policy in our office where we could not, or weren't supposed to be talking about faith at all. And one of the HR team members, who was not a believer at all, came to my cube one day and said, hey, can I ask you a personal question? And he was telling me a little bit about a family situation that he had, but this is a guy that did not believe. And he came to me to say, could you please pray for me in this family situation? So again, it's all about just the way that we walk and sometimes just the way we treat people. Makes a big impact.
So he might not have believed in prayer himself, but he knew you to be a praying man, and he asked you to pray for him.
It was quite an honor.
How cool is that? Chuck Cooper is the principal of WhiteWater Consulting, located in Charlotte, North Carolina, doing business wherever there's a small to medium-sized business that has some HR needs. You hear he has a heart for the Lord. Chuck, somebody's going to want to know more about WhiteWater Consulting. How do we go and find out more?
Thank you, Dr. Joey, for the opportunity just to be able to share that information with our listeners today.
Sure.
For those who would like to learn more, our website is whitewaterconsulting.net. And for our listeners here today, we have a special site set up for you, and that is whitewaterconsulting.net/faith positive. And cool. There you can find our contact information and a few other pieces of information that I think you would find valuable as a small or mid-sized business owner.
Okay, so we on whitewaterconsulting.net/faith positive, you can find some free documents about HR for small to medium-sized businesses that we can pick up, download, and find out more about what the secret in the sauce of WhiteWater Consulting is with Chuck Cooper. Man, thank you so much for the gift of your time today. I've so enjoyed this conversation. I love your transparent authenticity. Tell me, is there a Bible verse? And I know there are lots of verses in the Bible. I've read most of them. Is there a Bible verse that is your favorite, Chuck Cooper?
So as I went through, Dr. Joey, our valley and back this goes back to 1992. So it's been almost 29 years. The verse that helped me the greatest was Jeremiah 29:11, and basically where God says, for the plans I have for you, not to harm you, but to prosper, to give you a hope and a future. And that's one of the things I continue to keep in front of me all the time is that, our life is here in this world, but this is not our final home. And we've got quite the future ahead of us.
Yeah, we do. We're just passing through, aren't we? And
absolutely.
As I understand eternity, it's a very long time. So
very long.
Yeah. Hey, man, thanks for sharing Jeremiah 29:11 with us. That is a perpetual favorite. Who doesn't need hope, right?
Absolutely.
Especially in the midst of a pandemic. We're all looking for hope. Chuck Cooper, whitewaterconsulting.net/faith positive. Go get your goodies. Reach out to Chuck. What a story. Maybe you're going through a valley yourself, and you can just reach out to Chuck and find out what are some of the things he did, ways he opened up his mind and heart to listen to the Holy Spirit and how he came through all that. Sometimes, Chuck, I just need to know somebody else has been where I am, and I can make it too. Some encouragement. But man, if you're looking for HR help, Chuck is your man, because obviously he has a heart for the Lord and is going to help you and your company drive for excellent results. Thanks so much today, Chuck Cooper. We appreciate the gift of your time. Pray God's blessings on you, your wife, those 3 kids who are asleep in the back seat, and 7 grandchildren under the age of 5. Is that right?
That is correct. And number 8 will be here soon.
Oh my goodness. Probably by the time you're listening to this Faith Positive Nation, Chuck Cooper has 8 grandkids under the age of 5. How does one get so lucky? Chuck, thanks. God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Joey.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.